On April 23, 2006, the police were called to a triple homicide in Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. A neighborhood friend of Tyler Richardson went to his house to ask him to play. He knocked on the door, but no one answered, even though the family's cars were still in the driveway. So, curious, he peered through one of the windows. He froze when he saw a motionless body. He couldn't make out the details, but something about it felt deeply wrong. The boy ran straight home and told his mother, who immediately called the police. When the first patrol car arrived at the scene around 1 p.m., the officer knocked firmly on the door and announced his presence, but there was no response. The door was unlocked, so he entered. The officer made his way down to the basement and immediately reached for his radio. There, in a massive pool of blood, lay Mark Richardson, 42, and his wife, Deborah Richardson, 48. Both had been dead for some time. Deborah's body bore approximately 12 stab wounds, and Mark's about 24. Lacerations and penetrations were found on their chests and backs. They had bled to death, but the horror didn't stop there. He ascended to the upper floor and discovered the body of 8-year-old Tyler Richardson on the bed, also lifeless. The sheet and his beloved soft toys were soaked red. Tyler had suffered 5 stab wounds and a deep cut to the throat. As investigators examined photographs of the family displayed around the home, they noticed there were 4 members, yet only 3 bodies had been recovered. The eldest daughter, Jasmine, was missing, and the police's immediate concern became locating the girl. Kidnapping was a possibility, and if that were the case, time was running out. A photograph of the missing girl was released by the police in the hope that the public might assist, while forensic teams worked to verify the theory of a break-in, homicide, and possible abduction. Detectives proceeded to Jasmine's school and managed to gain access to her locker. What they found inside shifted the entire investigation. Among her books and notebooks were a series of comic-style drawings. One depicted a happy family at the park. In the next panel, one family member fetched petrol, returned to a car, and set the parents and child alight. This painted a startlingly different portrait of the girl, one who had gone from missing to a suspect in a matter of hours. However, considering that both parents had been stabbed to death, it seemed unlikely that a 12-year-old girl possessed the physical strength to carry out such an attack, which strongly suggested the presence of a 5th person at the crime scene. Someone who helped make this nightmare real. To understand what really happened, detectives had to look closer at the family's past. Deborah and Mark Richardson had met in 1990 at a gym in Canada. That gym offered special classes to help in overcoming substance abuse. That was why Mark was there. He met Deborah, they began dating, married, and bought a property in Medicine Hat. Their union led to the birth of their first child, Jasmine. 4 years later, they welcomed their second child, Tyler. In 2006, Jasmine was 12 and Tyler was 8. Mark had overcome his substance dependency, which no longer impacted the family. Both Jasmine and Tyler were described as highly intelligent children. By the time Jasmine was 11, she had already received an honor from her school and was considered among the top students. It was around this time that things began to change. Adolescence can bring rebellious phases, and while most pass, some individuals display troubling behavior, and Jasmine was one of them. She had 2 personalities, not due to any disorder, but by deliberate choice. The real-life Jasmine was bright and dedicated, a far cry from her online persona. She created a number of social media accounts, including one on MySpace. Initially, her profile showcased vivid colors, delicate illustrations, and motivational messages. But over time, the page adopted a gothic theme, a shift common in a rebellious teenager's phase. Of course, being goth, or attracted to that aesthetic, does not make someone a criminal. That doesn't mean anything on its own, yet it became relevant to the case's context. Jasmine shared numerous photos of herself in heavy makeup, dressed in black, and brandishing fake weapons. This image sharply contrasted with the real Jasmine, at least for a time. Jasmine spent much of her time chatting online with like-minded individuals. Her taste in music was one of the few things that pulled her out of her bedroom. Jasmine regularly attended gigs with a group of friends. At one such event, she met 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke. For reasons that remain unclear, Jeremy had been bullied at school. The harassment was so severe he dropped out. He refused to seek work and spent most days in a trailer he shared with his mother. She was an alcoholic, struggling to maintain stable relationships. There is no well-documented information about Jeremy's father, but he was apparently absent. Jeremy witnessed many men come and go from that trailer and had even been beaten by some of them. In 2006, he was unemployed and had no clear plans for the future. He passed the time chatting online with girls, many of whom were underage. He claimed to drink blood and called himself a werewolf, but beneath the theatrics was a deeply disturbed young man who would soon act on a chilling fantasy. Jasmine and Jeremy connected on social media and began messaging daily. Their interaction grew romantic and many messages were exchanged. Jeremy's influence brought Jasmine's hidden side into reality. Her bedroom walls changed color, her makeup became heavier, her behavior darker. At first, her parents offered support, believing it was a normal phase, until they found out about the relationship. Jasmine was only 12, and Jeremy's influence seemed far from benign. He gave her a necklace similar to his. This one, he claimed, contained real blood from himself. Jasmine's behavior worsened daily, so her parents intervened and discovered that she was in contact with him online. They removed her computer. Over time, her behavior improved. Encouraged, they returned the computer. But they never anticipated that Jasmine and Jeremy would reconnect and do so covertly. Their messages increased, and they made efforts to conceal the communication, making monitoring extremely difficult. Jeremy and Jasmine spoke of love, living in a theatrical fantasy bond. The belief that their love was hindered by her parents soon led them to dark, conspiratorial ideas. Among their online exchanges, Jasmine wrote, "I miss my boyfriend more than killing people," she said. "Can we be together and kill people?" Then, "I hate them," referring to her parents, adding that she had a plan beginning with their murder and ending with life alongside Jeremy. He responded in kind, agreeing they needed to plan carefully. This was no longer fantasy. They were conspiring to commit homicide, a crime with serious consequences in court. Deborah and Mark continued living normally, pleased that their daughter had regained stability. Their younger son, Tyler, was settling into school, and all seemed well. What no one in that house realized was that their fate lay in deadly messages on a computer screen. And tragically, those plans became reality on that fateful night. Back in the present, as news of the murders spread through Medicine Hat, detectives began to dig deeper into Jasmine's life. Jasmine's friends were interviewed, and police identified her boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke. Meanwhile, forensic teams recovered crucial messages and emails from the family's computer. These communications revealed the motive, even if a cruel one. Now, it was a matter of finding and arresting the perpetrators. It remains unclear what plan they had to live together afterward. There were no jobs, no money, no place to go. With Jasmine's face plastered in newspapers, it was only a matter of time before she was found. They were located about 100 miles from the crime scene. In the hours after the attack, the pair were bragging to friends about murdering Jasmine's parents, laughing as they described the details. At first, many thought it was a prank, until one friend contacted the media. The couple was stopped at a gas station and arrested. Whatever fantasy they were living in ended the moment they entered the interrogation room. Jeremy, now confronted with reality, faced up to the truth. An adult involved with a minor in plotting murder. In front of a uniformed officer, Jeremy claimed Jasmine had manipulated him. He confessed to the murders but insisted it was Jasmine who urged him into the hallway. Jasmine offered a different account, accusing Jeremy of carrying out the killings alone. She maintained the online messages were mere fantasy and she never intended to act, but Jeremy took them seriously and committed the murders. Here, forensic evidence became decisive. With two conflicting stories, it was science that established the truth. In the end, there were three versions of the story: his, hers, and what really happened. On the night of April 22, 2006, Jasmine facilitated Jeremy's entry into the home, disabling the locks and giving him the opportunity. He went upstairs just as Deborah headed to the basement to do laundry. Deborah was removing laundry when she encountered him. He held a knife and attacked her violently, ending her life. Her screams alerted Mark, who rushed downstairs and found his wife on the floor with a masked man standing over her. A struggle ensued. Mark attempted to wrest the weapon but failed. He was fatally stabbed. The parents' bodies were left side by side in the basement. According to the pair's plan, Jasmine was then supposed to kill her brother in his bedroom while Jeremy handled the parents' bodies. That point, however, remained unverified, too contradictory in the defendant's accounts. Jeremy claimed Jasmine killed Tyler alone. She, on the other hand, said she lacked the courage. He allegedly handed her the knife to complete the deed. She confessed to stabbing her brother, but insisted it was only one blow. The rest were inflicted by Jeremy. Forensics couldn't determine whose version was true. After the killings, Jeremy fled in his car. Minutes later, Jasmine took a taxi to meet him in a wooded area, a precaution meant to avoid being seen together. The taxi driver's testimony confirmed her demeanor. Polite, smiling, grateful, far from the behavior one would expect of a girl who had just lost her family. During the trial, the couple exchanged letters in hopes of revealing further insight. Even after accusing each other, they continued writing affectionate messages as if nothing had happened. Jeremy even proposed marriage in one letter, and she accepted. Of course, that marriage never happened. In June 2007, Jeremy Allen Steinke stood before the judge. His defense portrayed him as immature and insecure, attempting to justify his actions through a troubled childhood. These are hardly reasons to murder, however, and Jeremy was sentenced to 3 terms of life imprisonment, each with a minimum of 25 years before becoming eligible for parole. Jasmine Richardson was a minor at the time. She displayed no visible remorse during the trial, and there were reports she smiled as the murders were described. Under Canadian law, she could serve a maximum of 10 years in custody. She spent 4 years in a psychiatric institution and a further 4 years and 6 months under supervision. Having undergone therapy and distanced herself from Jeremy, Jasmine began expressing regret for her parents' deaths. The justice system regards her as a model of rehabilitation and hopes she will refrain from future offences. Jasmine enrolled at Mount Royal University in Calgary. Since 2016, she has held a new name and identity. She is now a free woman. Deborah and Mark Richardson loved their children and did everything they could to keep Jasmine close, but ultimately couldn't. Little Tyler, with even less influence and control, looked into his sister's eyes as she cruelly killed him among his stuffed animals. He never understood why. Unlike his sister, he was never given a second chance. Jeremy, now known as Jackson May, is incarcerated in Edmonton Institution, a maximum security prison in Alberta, Canada. He will be eligible for parole sometime in 2032. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and let us know in the comments which forgotten victims or overlooked stories deserve to be told next.